My name is Elena Voss. I'm 34 years old. Last Memorial Day, my younger sister stood up at our family picnic, raised a glass in front of 28 relatives, and called me a pathetic, broke embarrassment who never learned how to survive without sucking money from our parents. My mother laughed. Then she actually clapped, 3 sharp claps that echoed across the lawn like gunshots. I lifted my own glass, looked her dead in the eyes, and replied in 11 words. 28 people forgot how to swallow. But the story didn't begin that afternoon. It started 6 months earlier at 7:19 a.m. with a single notification on my phone and a plain brown folder I carried like a loaded weapon for 183 days before I finally laid it on the table. When my family finally saw what was inside that folder, 3 of them cried.
None of them was me.
Before I take you back to that morning by the lake, if you've ever been the quiet one who kept receipts while everyone else kept pretending, do me a favor, hit that like button. Drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. This is Midnight Drama Stories. Now, let's go back. It was 6 a.m. on Memorial Day. The kitchen smelled like fresh lemons and old wood. I was making my grandmother's lemon blueberry cake, the one she used to bake every year before cancer took her voice. I had measured every ingredient the night before. I had also slid the brown folder into the bottom of my canvas tote and zipped the inner pocket shut. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I had read every page so many times I could see the numbers when I closed my eyes. The wind coming off the lake carried pine and distant charcoal. I wore the same navy cotton dress my mother once told me made me look like a tired bank teller. I kept that dress for 14 years just so I could wear it on this day. At 6:47 a.m., I checked the hallway mirror. 2 mourning doves watched me from the porch roof as I loaded the cooler into my car. The folder made a soft, stiff sound against the passenger seat. I had my cake. I had my folder. I was ready. By the time I reached my parents' lake house, 11 cars were already parked. The house had been in our family since 1978. Memorial Day wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. I parked far away near the boathouse, the same spot I'd used for years so I could leave quickly if I needed to. My mother didn't notice me at first. She was too busy running, toward my sister Lila's white Range Rover. "There's my star," Mom shouted. Lila stepped out in a flowing white linen dress and matching sunglasses. She looked expensive. She looked untouchable. Her husband, Derek, trailed behind her carrying her bag like a servant. My father barely looked up from the porch. He gave me a nod. That was all I ever got. I carried the heavy cake to the long table. Aunt Clara was already there pretending to organize drinks. She glanced at my tote. "You brought it," she whispered. I nodded once. She touched my wrist for half a second, the only sign of support I would receive all day. By 11:20 a.m., Lila was holding court, telling everyone how she had taken our parents to Tuscany last fall because they deserved to be put first. She said it loud enough for the whole yard to hear. I knew the truth. My parents had paid for that trip. Lila had simply used Mom's debit card without asking. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I slipped behind the porch screen into the cool shade and opened the notification. Another withdrawal flagged for $1,700 this time. The signature? Lila Voss Hale. That made 14 withdrawals in 18 months. Total drained, $94,000. I closed the app, took a slow breath that tasted like charcoal and lies, and walked back outside. At 12:05 p.m., Lila decided it was time for a toast. She tapped her glass with a knife. The conversations died down. She stood at the head of the table in her perfect white dress, sun glowing behind her like a halo. "I just want to say something real quick," she smiled. "To my big sister Elena, the one who still shows up broke, bitter, and desperate for attention. Maybe one day you'll finally grow up." The silence was violent. Then my mother laughed a real laugh and clapped. 3 times.
Loud.
My father snorted. A few cousins looked away in embarrassment. Derek smirked behind his beer. Something inside me clicked into place. I stood up slowly. I raised my glass of ice water. "I'd like to return the toast," I said, voice calm. Every head turned. To the desperate one, I continued, who stole $94,000 from mom and dad's retirement account and thought no one would ever find out. The glass slipped from Lila's hand. Red wine exploded across the front of her white linen dress like blood. My mother's hand froze mid-clap. My father set his beer down so slowly it felt like the world had been paused. No one spoke. Even the lake seemed to go quiet. Lila tried to laugh. "That's not funny, Elena." "I wasn't joking," I replied, then sat down and took a bite of cake as if nothing had happened. 28 faces had forgotten how to swallow. That night, the family group chat exploded. Lila posted that I had had a mental breakdown and was attacking her out of jealousy. She asked everyone to pray for me. The next morning, my mother called screaming that I owed Lila a public apology. I told her no. Instead, I opened the brown folder and added her text message to the top. For the next 6 weeks, I became a ghost who gathered evidence. I met with Margaret Hale, our family's longtime attorney, every Tuesday night. She built me a perfect timeline. 14 withdrawals, forged signatures, a secret LLC in Delaware called Lux Haven Holdings that Lila had been using to hide debt, $217,000 in consumer debt, a leased Range Rover, private school tuition for her kids that my parents unknowingly paid. Every time I added a new document to that folder, I felt the weight increase. It had become a living thing. One afternoon, I drove past my grandmother's old house. I sat in the car for 20 minutes staring at the empty bird feeder. I didn't cry. I had decided long ago that crying over Lila was a tax I refused to pay anymore. If you're watching this right now and you have a family member who drains everyone around them while playing victim, pause this video and hit like. Let me know I'm not alone. Comment the word folder if you're still here with me. I'll see you on the other side. The final confrontation happened on a Saturday in late July at the same lake house. I arrived at 8:50 a.m., 2 hours early. I let myself in with the spare key I'd had for 15 years. I found Lila already in my father's office, frantically going through the safe.
She jumped when she saw me.
"What are you doing here?" she hissed. I placed a fourth folder on the desk. A Kinder version. One that gave her a way out if she took it. "Read it before they arrive," I said quietly. "So, you're not surprised." I walked out, made coffee, and sat on the porch. I heard the folder open behind me. Her hands were shaking so badly, the papers rattled. At 11 a.m., the family arrived. I laid 3 thick folders on the dining table, like I was dealing cards in hell. Folder 1. The timeline, every withdrawal, every date, every forged signature. Folder 2. The LLC documents, debt consolidation statements, and the forged power of attorney she had slipped into the paperwork. Folder 3. Screenshots, group chat manipulation, and witness statements. My mother opened the first folder. Her face went the color of old paper. Lila tried to run. Aunt Clara blocked the door and said, "Sit down, Lila. You don't get to clap at someone's humiliation and then run from your own." My father read every line with his finger pressed against the page the way he always did when something mattered. When he finally looked up at Lila, his voice was shaking with rage and heartbreak. "You stole from us while we were helping you?" Lila broke. Not the fake crying I had seen for years. This was real.
Ugly. Desperate.
My mother stared at the papers for a long time. Then she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said the words I had waited my entire life to hear. "I clapped while she tore you apart. I'm so ashamed of myself, Elena. I'm sorry." She reached for my hand across the table. I let her hold it for 3 seconds, then gently pulled away. Some bridges burn slower than others. I slid the handwritten agreement across the table. 5 conditions. Margaret had already prepared the legal paperwork. Lila would enter financial counseling. She would follow a strict repayment plan. She would have no direct access to my parents' accounts for 5 years. And she and I would have no contact until she proved she had changed. My mother signed first. Then my father. Lila signed last with shaking hands. 6 weeks later, the leaves were already turning. I painted my office a color called winter smoke. My mother now calls me every Wednesday afternoon with small questions about bills and insurance. My father visits sometimes. We don't talk about Lila much. She has paid back $8,400 so far. She's in counseling. She and Derek have separated.
The table is smaller now.
I used to believe family was something you were sentenced to. I understand now that family is a table. Some people bring food. Some people only bring their appetite. I choose who sits at mine. If this story hit you in the chest, subscribe to Midnight Drama Stories. The next one is already in the works. A woman who discovered her father's will had been changed the night before his funeral by the brother who swore he loved him. Tell me in the comments, what is the hardest truth you ever carried in silence? I read every comment. And remember, some folders are heavier than others. But the truth always weighs exactly what it should.